want?
Come on, Jason. It's past 7. Mommy said I can play today.
Why should I let you play my game?
Mama said if I get a 90 on my report card, then I can play. She promised me.
Promise? The only thing promised in life is death and taxes.
Death and taxes?
Yeah, death. Just like what happened to Ginger.
We didn't die. We were sleeping upside down. That's all. And what does death have to do with taxes anyway?
It's a quote.
But what are taxes?
You're kidding me, right? Did they teach you anything at that school?
It's not my fault that my school sucks.
Once again, I'm gonna have to hand you the fish. Just as every household has a budget, so does every government. A budget is a policy document allocating burdens, taxes, and benefits expenditures. Therefore, one can conclude that expenditures are what the government spends its financial resources or revenues on.
But how does the government make its money?
Good question. There are 3 major sources for federal revenue. The first is the personal and corporate income taxes, in which the government directly taxes your paycheck. It's a funny story, actually. The income tax was actually declared unconstitutional in Pollock v. Farmers Loan and Trust Corp. in 1895. At this time, Congress adopted its first peacetime income tax, which taxed only 2% of income earned beyond the sum of $4,000. But a lawyer who opposed the tax cited that it was the first step of a communist march. However, in 1913, Congress overruled the Supreme Court by passing the 16th Amendment to the Constitution, which permitted Congress to levy an income tax. Today, the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, collects the income taxes of over 143 million Americans. You're probably wondering, how come only 143 million Americans pay income taxes when there are over 300 million Americans in the United States? Well, the United States is very nice when it comes to cutting its citizens a break.
This is the Hollywood Sunset Free Clinic, which provides health care to poor children. From an architectural standpoint, not much to look at. This is the Mormon Temple in San Diego. Either that or Superman's Fortress of Solitude. Someone has to explain to me why Mitt Romney gets a tax write-off for giving money to the people who already own this. A good rule of thumb for telling the real charities from the fakes is real charities don't have castles. This is Disney Hall, where the LA Symphony performs. Lots of people give money to symphonies, and they get tax deductions for that. But they shouldn't.
The federal government incorporates tax loopholes or tax breaks/benefits, which cut taxes for certain citizens who meet different requirements, some as simple as being unemployed, or as specific as being a single parent. This creates a pool of what have been money that some members in Congress are disappointed about not getting. This pool of monies that the government could collect but doesn't because they are exempted for taxation are called tax expenditures. The federal income tax is an example of a progressive tax, which we'll come back to later. A second source of revenue are social insurance taxes. These taxes include, but are not limited to, Social Security and Medicare taxes. Both taxes are taken out of your paychecks, and they came about during what many people like to call the rise of the social service state. We'll talk more about Social Security and Medicare later. A third source of revenue is simply borrowing money. Our country is really good at this. It's partly because of borrowing so much money that we are $17 trillion in debt. That, complemented with many expenditures, have led to a constant budget deficit, in which spending exceeds revenues in a fiasco year.
Because the official figure of $16 trillion seemed worryingly high, but according to a study by the University of California, America's debt is actually 4 times higher at $70 trillion. So how much does that sum equate to? Well, let's compare it to the world's most valuable company, Apple. So here we go then. Now, as you can see, this official figure equates to 40 Apple empires, but Professor Hamilton's studies found that the US has over $70 trillion of unaccounted for debt, which would make up a total of 165 Apples. But it turns out that even 70 trillion may be an understatement. A former economic advisor for President Ronald Reagan, Professor Kotlikoff, says it could be as much as 211 trillion or 500 times the world's most valuable company.
So does everyone pay the same amount of taxes?
Not quite. There are many types of taxes. For example, progressive taxes are taxes that increase as its base increases. Now remember earlier how I mentioned that the U.S. federal income tax was a progressive tax? Well, in its most basic form, when you make more money, you pay more taxes. In other words, the amount of tax you pay is directly connected to the amount of money you make. Therefore, as your personal income increases and your ability to pay gets higher, you must pay a greater percentage of taxes. The reverse is also true. If you have a low income and therefore a low ability to pay, then you pay less taxes.
So basically, the less money you make, the less you pay in taxes?
Exactly. And since your ability to pay determines the amount of taxes you pay, taxpayers are broken up into different tax brackets. For example, people who made up to $10,000 fell into the 10% bracket, while those who made $300,000 or more fell into the 30% bracket. Since the ability to pay is such a huge part of progressive taxes, there are arguments for and against it. Those for it say it's a fair way of redistributing income. Those who make more should pay more to help fund programs designed to support those who make less, because those who make less have less of an ability to pay, and therefore should pay less. Those against it say that it's a punishment for those who worked harder to earn more money. In other words, you're being punished for your success. In the end, progressive taxes are simply a way of sharing the burdens taxpayers bear, based on who can carry more weight. Now, proportional taxes, or flat taxes, are taxes whose average rate is constant at all income levels. Or in a way you'll understand better, if I pay a certain percent of my money on taxes, you will also pay the same percent.
So does that mean we both pay the same amount of money?
Well, not exactly. Let's say if a guy named, Johnny makes an income of $10 and the tax rate is 10%. He'll pay $1 in taxes. But let's say if Steve makes $20, he'll also have to pay 10%, which is $2. This shows you that in a proportional tax, people still say the same percent of their income, but that doesn't mean that they pay the same amount.
Oh, I understand now. But what's that third type of tax?
The third type of taxes are regressive taxes. Regressive taxes are taxes in which the average rate of tax decreases as the amount of taxable income increases. So basically, regressive taxes imposes a greater tax burden on the poor in comparison to the rich. This may be complicated to understand, so let me give you an example.
Lulu's food service only has one product for sale, a chocolate bar. Two of this good is $5, and the tax is equal to $2. Consumer A has an income of $100, marking him as a low-income individual. Consumer B has an income of $10,000, marking him as a high-income individual.
Yo, what up? Let me get one of those candy bars, play.
What's your name, my poorly educated man?
Yo, thanks, dog. This is real good stuff right here. Good day, ma'am. I would like to purchase one of your scrumptious candy bars, please.
Why, sure thing, my well-educated man.
Why, thank you, my good man. This is the best candy bar across the land. Have a pleasant day, and do keep the change.
Consumer A has to pay $2 worth of his taxes out of his $100 income. This is equal to 0.02 tax rate of his income. Consumer B also has to pay $2 out of his $10,000 income. This is equal to 0.0002 tax rate of his income. Consumer B has a higher income and pays a lower tax rate in comparison to Consumer A. This is an example of a regressive tax.
Wow, I never knew all of this before.
Yeah, taxes come in different varieties. As you can see, there are many types of taxes.
Taxes sound very complicated. No wonder Mom and Dad are always so stressed over them.
Yeah, taxes are really complicated, but it helps to understand them when you learn more about them.
So now that the country has money, what do they spend it on?
Well, there are many programs and sectors that U.S. tax dollars go towards. Everything from defense to NASA is covered under the U.S. budget, passed by Congress every year with the help of the president. But the top areas of government spending of Americans' tax dollars are in the areas of welfare and defense. Welfare spending accounts for about 1/5 of the federal budget and incorporates both Social Security and Medicare. Social Security works like this. Today's workers pay for today's retirees, and today's young people pay for today's old people. Medicare, or health insurance for old people, was also tacked onto the Social Security system in 1965 by Lyndon B. Johnson. Don't get Medicare confused with Medicaid. Think of it like this. Medicare cares for old people, while Medicaid caters to the poor. Both Social Security and Medicare are considered forms of uncontrollable expenditures, which are areas of government spending mandated by law or a private obligation. About 2/3 of the federal budget is uncontrollable. The main problem with uncontrollable expenditures is that benefits distributed to recipients are determined not by how much Congress decides to appropriate funds to an agency, but by how many eligible beneficiaries there are for a particular program. This is why the rise of the baby boomers pose a threat to the Social Security system, which is already running thin on funds. When the baby boomers retire, the amount of beneficiaries will exceed the amount of people paying into Social Security. Therefore, expenditures mandated by an existing law or obligation, such as Social Security or Medicare, are likely to follow a pattern of incrementalism, which means that the best predictor of this year's budget is last year's budget, plus a little bit more. Another area of great spending is defense.
If you feel bad about so much money in this country going to defense, don't forget, if we didn't spend more money on weapons than every other country in the world combined, then Iran could not put the bomb they don't have on the Korean rocket that doesn't work.
Defense spending comprises of about 1/6 of the federal budget. After World War II and into the Cold War period, the United States had an arms race with the Soviet Union, resulting in a permanent military establishment and expensive military technology. It has gotten so bad that former President of the United States coined the phrase military-industrial complex to characterize the close relationship between the military hierarchy and the defense industry that supplies the hardware needs.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Well, that's all I can tell you about taxes.
Wow, I should just skip school and let you be my teacher.
Yeah, I know. I'm that awesome. But anyway, since you were such a good student, I'm going to let you play for the rest of the night. Anyway, I got to do homework.
Wait, I have to ask you another question.
Fire away.
If we can't get rid of death, can we get rid of taxes?
Now you're thinking like a conservative.
What is a conservative?
A conservative is a rare species of humans whose brains are wired to seek dominance over all other species of nature.
How do you know this?
'Cause my principal is a conservative.
Ben Franklin and this shan't be pretty. Let me instruct you how we battle in the city of Philly. You couldn't sell Rick James a bag of crack. You're out of practice. My victory's more certain than death or taxes.